This is the only one we've managed to scan so far. And I would love to say that because you can't get your hands on these things. That in general, curators of Egyptology museums aren't interested in their manufacturing or engineering, and you don't get access to these vases to do it. This one came from
How could they not be interested in that?
I don't know. It blows my mind. So here's an example of like another perfect. I'd love to scan this one. It's one of my favorites. It's like you can see the symmetry inherent in the vase just in the fact that it's sitting on like almost like an eggshell. Like it's so perfect. But what that study is showing, and what that precision that's now been measured is showing, that okay, these were turned on a machine. And not only were they turned on a machine, but when you think about the shape of the vase, it has these lug handles, right, on each side. They're like got little holes through them. Those can't be turned. Those you can't. If you think of it spinning and this is being carved by a machine,
right?
Those lug handles can't be turned. You would have to cut out like a round thing around it, and then take another tool and shape the lug handles without turning it. Now, in precision manufacturing, when you introduce another tool, that introduces error. Even in our best processes today, and we just don't see that on this vase. Like those lug handles are within 1/1000th of an inch of being perfectly aligned with those other surfaces of the vase. It's that relativity of one section of the vase to another that means A, unquestionably not possible by hand, but B, this has been designed. Like somebody made a model of this and they had a very sophisticated bit of machinery that must have carved it out.
And when we talk about this machinery, like what's the speculation? I mean, what do they think was used to carve these things? Is there any markings on them that would indicate?
Yeah, there is. So this is a whole other discussion when you get into the depths of this work. So when you look at ancient Egypt and the way that gets treated, they found tools. And I should say it's very rare to find metal in the ancient world, right? As soon as the Bronze Age starts, any metal, super precious, gets smelted down, turned into tools, weapons, things like that. So it's very rare to find metal in general. But across ancient Egypt, they found a bunch of tools. So they found some, copper chisels, bronze chisels, very primitive stuff, some wooden, squares and plumb bobs, pounding stones, flint chisels. So those are the tools that are found. And in general, it's like the orthodoxy here and the academia will do everything they can to just hammer everything you find into this box and say, these are the tools we've found, so therefore everything's made by these tools. Now, outside of that, there's a whole realm of what I would call machining marks that exist all over these sites in Egypt. There's a place called Abu Sir that's been closed to the public for more than 100 years. You have to get special permission to go there. It's one of my favorite sites. It's an Old Kingdom site, like 5th Dynasty. And all over this site, you find amazing evidence for massive circular saws. You see machining marks. There are these tube drills. I've got like an hour-long documentary just on the tube drills because there's been an argument going on for 150 years about the tube drills. There is evidence for very sophisticated and powerful tools that is etched into these artifacts from the very earliest points in Egypt all over the place. And a lot of these things, they disappear in later periods of time.
Go back to that image, Jamie, that you just had. Look at that.
Yeah, so here's an example. I didn't send you any of the machining marks, but I can show them to you at some point. So you find the tube drills are really interesting because it's a very thin tool, and what they would do, they range in size from like a 1/2 inch up to 9 inches.
And are those plugs that were removed from the stone?
So it's like a hollow tool that gets cut down, and then you snap off the core. And now Flinders Petrie, he was you familiar with Petrie? He was around like late 1800s, early 1900s. I use his work a lot in the stuff that I do because he was the first guy to apply engineering principles to what we saw, which is kind of this meta point that messes with my head a bit in that it took our civilization up to the industrial age to even be able to put some of this stuff into context. Like anyone else that looked at this stuff before we understood what machining was, what working in this stone was, what it looks like to cut stone with a circular saw, you don't have the context to explain it. So we had to get to the industrial age and develop sort of mass manufacture and engineering for us to even recognize what we're seeing here. Wow. So he found there's a famous core. It's called Petrie's Core Number 7, and it's a drill core from one of these holes. It's in granite, and it's located in the Petrie Museum. And this museum is one that actually allows research appointments, and you can analyze it. And it's been analyzed several times. There's been an argument that's been going on for literally 150 years about this core because what Petrie found and what Chris Dunn later verified. Yeah, that's Petrie's Core Number 7, exactly right there. That, in fact, might even be Chris Dunn's photo. those spiral that groove that goes around it, very obvious striations, right? So it's been incontrovertibly shown that that's a spiral. It's a spiral. So it's not like just horizontal striation. So if you can imagine the way we do it today we have tube drills and core drills, spins really fast, makes lots of little marks. There's been studies done looking at those sort of marks. That's not what we're seeing here. What we see here is a continuous spiral groove of at least 2 points. So it's a twin spiral that runs down the length of the core. Now, from that and analyzing that, you can determine a few things. Things like how fast was this drill, or how quickly was this drill penetrating the granite. And Petrie and Dunn both analysed it and looked at it. Well, it's about a 1 in 60 rate. So for each, say, 60 inches of horizontal travel, it's going 1 inch into the stone. So imagine that. So if you take a spiral and straighten it out, and you just imagine, all right, 60 inches this way, you're getting 1 inch of vertical travel. That figure is 500 times greater than we can achieve today in terms of how fast it penetrates the granite.
500 times greater.
Now, it doesn't mean it cut quicker. It could have been moving slowly, like it might have been turning slowly.
Right.
But it's penetrating the granite at a rate far greater than what we can achieve with our technology today.
This is why it's so important to bring outside eyes into this, whether it's an aerospace engineer. Like this is, going back to Troy, that was discovered by a businessman. He wasn't an archaeologist. That's something that most people don't know. It's like when you bring an outside set of eyes with different sets of experiences, they'll pick up on things that others wouldn't.
Look at that image, that all the spiral lines around that. That's just amazing.
Yeah, so you can go there, and I intend to do this. I might be in the UK this year, and I intend to do that. It's called the cotton wrap test. You can actually, under a little microscope, run a piece of cotton through that groove. Now, they actually took it a step further, and they made a latex molding of it, right? And so then they sent it to Chris Dunn. The Petrie Museum did this, and then he cut reference holes in it, cut it out, and then geometrically proved basically that this is a spiral groove. Like it starts above the line and ends below the line. He showed that that's it. And what I would love to see happen is we could get this core and then scan it with that structured light scanner, because it will put that stuff to bed, no problem. Like there's, as far as I'm concerned, this is a spiral groove. The case has been closed, but people still argue the point. But it's 100% an indicator of some form of technology that's far away beyond the primitive stuff that we attribute to the dynastic Egyptians. So to me, it's an indicator that, and I don't think the dynastic Egyptians, they don't describe having this type of capability. We've never found any tools from them that can do this type of thing. So I think what we're looking at here with dynastic Egypt is a story. It's a longer timeline. It's a story of inheritance.